RFK Jr. just suspended his campaign for president in battleground states, despite his long fight for ballot access across the country. Let's compare Kennedy's campaign to the last strong independent campaign, that of Ross Perot in 1992. In the 92 election, Perot ran as an independent against George H.W. Bush, the incumbent president at that time, and Bill Clinton, who would go on to win that election and become president. Perot and Kennedy have a lot of similarities. Both men wanted to balance the national budget and reduce our deficit. They both wanted to bring jobs back to America from overseas where they have been outsourced, and they both wanted to end U.S. military involvement overseas. For Perot, he was opposed to the Gulf War, and for Kennedy, he is opposed to our involvement in Ukraine. He's also opposed to what he calls forever wars and our general presence overseas. Both men grew to popularity by making use of independent media. Perot paid money for TV time where he spoke directly to the audience, often with graphs and visuals to help illustrate his points. Kennedy used podcasts to spread his message across the internet and reach a wide population of people all across the country and all across the world. Both campaigns resonated most strongly with individuals who identified as independent or moderate. This was especially the case with people who were frustrated with the traditional two-party system, what Kennedy sometimes calls a duopoly or a uniparty. In Perot's case, he was polling higher than Clinton and Bush at one point, but then he suspended his campaign briefly due to some chaos internally and only reactivated his campaign about a month or two before the election when he had ballot access in all 50 states. Now, despite all of the back and forth and all of the chaos, Perot still got about 18% of the popular vote. Even with that big chunk of the popular vote, he did not win any electoral college votes. Now, Kennedy, at some points throughout his campaign, was polling at 20%, which is the highest an independent candidate has polled at since Perot. Kennedy also had to overcome multiple obstacles and challenges put forth by the DNC and the RNC. Not to mention, after Perot's campaign in 92, a bunch of laws were passed that made it harder for independent candidates to make a run for president because George H.W. Bush and Republicans blamed Perot for their loss in that election cycle, even though it's not very likely that he was a spoiler candidate that people claimed him to be. The spoiler candidate argument is just like, it's just a lazy argument, in my opinion. If you want people to vote for you, just be a better candidate. Don't go around blaming Jill Stein or Gary Johnson or Ross Perot for you losing voters. Just be a better candidate. Now, Kennedy is probably the only person who could have overcome all of these obstacles that were put in place after 1992 because he's got the Kennedy name, he's got the financial backing, and he's got the decades of experience. I'm sure after this election cycle, more rules will be put in place to make it harder for independent candidates. So will we ever see an independent candidate with a successful campaign again? Will we ever see somebody get ballot access in every state? I am doubtful. Let me know what you think.